The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to the CAS Virtual Showcase 2021 and this talk about moving homework online. My name's Suzanne Cray and I'm the CAS Outreach Manager for the Southwest, and I'm joined by Will Franklin today, who's leading this session. Shortly I'll introduce Will, but just before we start, just a couple of housekeeping notes. During the session, please use the question window on the right-hand side of your screen to ask questions. The top of the window's got an orange rectangle, which can be expanded or collapsed. We'll be making a note of questions posed there, and these will be answered during the session. If time's short, though, responses will be posted on the CAS forum and across CAS social media channels. And I'll also be posting any useful links in the chat window throughout the session, so just keep an eye on that. The hashtag for this event is CAS Virtual 21, and as a reminder, all attendees are in listen-only mode. So let me introduce Will Franklin. Will is a Key Stage 2 teacher based in Brighton. He currently teaches Year 5 and has previously taught in year groups across the primary age range. As computing coordinator at his school, he helped his school adopt a new online learning platform and find opportunities to teach the curriculum remotely during lockdown. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Will, and we'll see how we go ahead.
Thank you, Suzanne. And hello, everyone who's joined us so far. I'm just going to quickly fiddle with the presenter settings and give myself screen sharing rights. There we go. Okay, so according to my computer, I am now screen sharing. Suzanne, do let me know if that isn't the case.
You're not in presenter mode, Will. Just we can see all the slides to the left. That's all. That's
fine. Yeah, that's what I can see. Good. Right, let's go presenter. Here we go. Right. Yes, so thank you for joining us today. I realise that homework is probably not the most riveting subject in the world for most teachers, but it is a very common part of our day-to-day lives. And what I wanted to talk about today was how a few examples of how we have learnt lessons from the pandemic and home learning, and use those lessons to help us start to adapt our offer that we provide in terms of homework in a more digital way, because we've started to realize, initially we weren't really allowed to send homework books home anymore, so we already had to adapt because of that. And then we locked down again in January, and we learned a lot of tricks in that time, things we hadn't used, new tools, things we hadn't used before. We adopted so in my school personally, we adopted Google Classroom, and I know lots of people have adopted Microsoft Teams as well, and I'll refer to those throughout the session today. And really just we thought, well, do we want to go back to the way it used to be? Because the old way, which is still a part of what we do, it was very much book-based, and it was an extra set of books to mark every Thursday in our case, to get back out on Friday, and those books became an absolute heap of tats by Christmas, because they were in and out of bags all the time. And we thought we could do this better. We could do this much better, and at the same time we could also engage children better during this process. And so what I want to do today is take the opportunity to share with you some of the more over the top, I guess, ways, creative ways of doing homework. That's a better way to describe it. And just show you what we've attempted, what we're planning to bring forwards with us into the new academic year, and what we're willing to say goodbye to. All the while keeping with the usual CAS sort of ethos of trying to keep things as as free and accessible to all schools as possible. So, first question. I keep accidentally flicking through my slides because I'm clicking on something wrong. Here we go. So, first question I'd like to pitch to the audience, because it will help me when I'm sort of describing what we're doing, if I can relate it to what you do yourselves at school. Because in choosing the topic of how to take homework online, I hadn't quite considered the fact that every school does this ever so slightly differently, but it's a welcome challenge. I'd like to know, in the question window, please let us know, what does your school currently do for homework? What is your sort of standard sort of homework And you can base that entirely just on the year group you're currently in, or sort of a generic sort of overview of what you currently do for homework. And what I'll do is I'll ask Suzanne in a moment, as those start to come through, to share some of your responses. I'll be interested to see what you've got. Whilst you're thinking about it and typing them into the question window, this is what we are currently doing, although we're in a process of transition. At my particular school, we tend to split homework into 3 tasks, or 3 particular areas, and that is literacy focused stuff, maths focused, and spelling, which I realise is also literacy. And we tend to do something sort of sentence level, usually to do with the spellings, and we do that through Google Docs and through Google Classroom. And we've been doing that ever since we came back from lockdown 3. Prior to that, it was homework books initially. Then, of course, we couldn't use those. In fact, it was earlier than lockdown 3 we started using Google Docs. And we've also introduced online reading through a program called Bug Club, which is an expensive program. It's not something I'm going to refer to much today because it is a paid for service. I'll show you some alternative things we're doing. But that's what we're doing because it's got comprehension questions. There's loads of services just like it. Accelerated readers, quite popular in schools. Essentially, it's a collection of books and quiz questions to go with them. And then for maths, we tend to set an activity on My Maths, which again is another paid service, and it has activities available that we can then sort of push out to the children to do in a certain time, and it automatically marks and it automatically updates, and it contains lessons. So it's a fantastic tool. It is paid for. It is quite expensive, but we use that. And finally, for spelling, every week we do 6 rule-based words to do with whatever we're learning that week, plus 2 year 5, 6 spelling words in my particular year group. And that is still done in a homework book, although I am going to show you some spelling alternatives, online alternatives today, because that's kind of the point. But we stuck with homework books for that, simply because, practicing things by hand, spelling especially, seemed to be the better option at the time, especially considering we didn't want the devices to spell check for them. And we were still sort of finding our way on spelling alternatives. We've since discovered a few things. I'm going to share a couple here, but also some useful websites, which I'm not going to mention in any detail, like spellingframe.co.uk, which is very good for personalized spelling lists and activities around them. Suzanne, have we got anything in the question section about what other schools are doing at the moment?
Yeah, we've got one response from Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. She says we use 6 sentences for writing, activity linked to current maths and reading comprehension, some set through assignments on Teams and some sent to parents.
Nice. Okay, so it's good to see, yeah, people are starting to incorporate their online learning platforms in what they're using. That's very much what we're trying to do. Now that we've adopted Google Classroom, we are trying to make it quite an integral part of weekly life, even when we're not in lockdown. And so homework's one of the ways that we're doing that. So my follow-up question then to this, to everybody who's watching today, and do please continue to answer the first question if you can, is what is the purpose of homework in your school? Because this is a really important question, as every school sort of considers homework in slightly different ways. So what is the point of homework for your school? As a teacher, what do you aim to achieve through setting your homework? Homework's quite a divisive thing in many ways, and the Education Endowment Foundation actually doesn't put a lot of benefit behind primary homework, which is really interesting. But it is very common and it's been around for a very long time, and so I can't think of a single school that I've ever been to that doesn't do homework, but everyone's purpose for homework slightly varies. We do the typical English and maths homework, but some people are starting to branch out a bit into more topic-based stuff, which is really exciting. But I'd like to know from you in the audience, what is the purpose of homework in your school? What do you set homework for? I'll just give you a couple of minutes to respond to that. while we wait on those responses, Suzanne, I'm going to ask you a similar question, because you're here sort of acting in the parent capacity for me today, because I don't have children. I've never had to sit down with a child and actually do homework with them. So as teachers, we do need to consider the other side of the coin, which is what life is like at home when this homework's being done. As a parent, what kind of things would you want schools to consider when setting homework and thinking about how to set homework?
Thank you. Yeah, you kind of get a different view, don't you, if you're a parent and a teacher, because you kind of see both sides of the coin, really. And it certainly made me think about homework I've set as a teacher once I'd seen it from a parent's point of view. I suppose the main things are to know as a parent what's expected of my child. So really be able to understand quite easily what the expectations are and what the homework is, so that we can then, you know, rephrase it to our child to try and help them if they're not quite getting it. So that I think is really important. Also a consideration of time as well. We did find over last year particularly, there's been massive changes or variations in the amount of time a particular task takes. So just I suppose just a clear consideration and expectation of the time that it might take to complete the task. And finally, and I think actually this has been said already with the comments that have come through, really, is it's much easier from a parent's point of view if it's something a topic that they've already seen. So not necessarily new learning, but reinforcing something they just learned, or maybe even something from, you know, a few weeks back, to try and consolidate and reinforce that learning. That would be good from a parent's point of view. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's really helpful to hear that stuff. And we survey our parents fairly, termly, really, to ask about how homework's going. Much more in the first term, just to check it's all okay. Especially now we're trying to sort of be a little more experimental. Are there any other comments that have come through in regards to either what homework people are doing or the purpose of the homework at their school?
Yes, all right. Sarah again has said the purpose is to reinforce learning from the classroom and to engage parents in the learning journey. And I think that's really important, actually. And Adrian, I think, responding to the previous question, in the past, Year 6 have mostly had worksheets to take home for SPAG, maths and reading, sometimes SAT-style worksheets. And he says we need to be using more online resources more.
Yeah, fair enough. And I've got some possible suggestions with stuff like that. So that's really good. Thank you, Suzanne. All right, so do continue to keep adding ideas, comments, questions into the question window at any time. And I'll get Suzanne just to sort of throw them across if they're relevant at the time or at the end if needs be. So what I'm going to do today is go through just a few things. And I don't at any time want to sort of preach to the choir, because in many ways, many of you attending this probably know more things about aspects of homework than me. But I do want to just share sort of the thought process that has been going on at my school recently around sort of adopting online homework more often and trying, moving away from the book-based stuff. Not only because we sort of want to, because we think it's more exciting, but also because we want to keep going with the traction that we've gained from lockdown, which is that children are far more familiar with working online. Even our youngest are. And so I wanted to begin by sort of highlighting, well, what's the difference between now and before, and why are we really talking about moving homework online at this point in time? And it is because of these main factors which the pandemic massively accelerated. And that is that families, as far as we're aware from surveying, now have access to more devices and internet than before. And the slightly ill-fated government device scheme has supported that eventually. So we've got that, and more schools have adopted learning platforms like Google Classroom and Microsoft Teams. So actually a lot of schools now have quite shared systems, so they can share ideas a lot better, but also those systems are really workable in the classroom as well. And children are just more familiar with working on the computer because they had to for some time. And so we want to sort of take this situation, especially that one at the top about more families having access, and really keep the momentum going, because in previous times we were in a situation often where we had to still provide offline versions of online homework, which just seemed completely counterintuitive for families who didn't have device access. But now we're, if a family doesn't have access to a device, it's kind of become our priority to find a way, whether through donations or whether through whatever means we can get them a device that they can use. And so what I want us to do is at our school, and I want to encourage you guys to do, is to take the power of all this sort of change and let's go with it, and let's do some exciting stuff. All right, so beginning with a few top tips then, and the bottom one here certainly relates to the comment about sort of doing worksheets and things. I'll come back to that in just a moment, but first of all, try to use what you've got. We have learned over the last couple of years with the pandemic stuff that at one point we had accounts for the children for SumDog, My Maths, Times Table Rockstars. We had accounts on our own VLE. We then had this and that and that and that. And just, I think a lot of parents, thinking from a parent's perspective, were overwhelmed with sort of, where are they supposed to do this or that? So what we're trying to do is trying to bring everything back to the center again and try to do things from Teams or in our case, Classroom, because it just makes life easier for everyone if that's your central starting point. And the good news is, and I am going to be slightly biased towards talking about Google Classroom more only because I use it at my school, but I have included lots of Microsoft stuff today as well. In a recent Google announcement about updates to their platform, they did say that they're going to start to integrate more services within the platform. And so things like Kahoot, which we'll have a go at soon, you'll be able to launch from within Classroom. So they're kind of bringing everything into the fold. And what's really nice with using your own platforms is a lot of things now are integrating Microsoft logins or Google logins to things. So we don't have to set up all these separate accounts, but make your life a lot easier. Try to keep everything central. They're limited, absolutely. Teams and Google Classroom haven't got every tool in the toolbox, but there are a few good things you can do with them, which I'll show in this presentation. Be considerate of devices is quite similar to Suzanne's point about be considerate of time. If we're quite technological, we get through, we use technology a lot, we're very familiar with it. We've got to remember there will be families and still some children who really find technology quite slow to use. And although we do want them to learn and make good habits, we do have to consider, this might take me 10 minutes, but how long will it take a child? And all homework policies should have some limit on the time it takes for something to happen. And I'm going to share some tools today which are quite time limited, which is nice. Incorporate offline elements. Share. The internet opens up this wonderful world of sharing photos or better still videos of things that aren't easily brought into school. Let's get pupils making videos of stuff. And the final top tip, and I'll sort of interweave all of this into the things I show, is I think the main thing we learned, especially during that first lockdown and homework ongoing, is it's very difficult to digitize old homework. So although a lot of us have books or collections of old but gold activities, worksheets, you name it, fill the box, tick box, all that kind of stuff. Actually, you end up spending longer trying to sort of replicate it online than just thinking about a better way of doing it. So, originally we were looking for something that would turn a worksheet into an interactive sheet on Google Classroom, and nothing really existed. There was one thing that may or may not have worked, had a very limited free trial. And so we just thought, well, actually, no, let's not try and recreate what we had. Let's create something better. So let's have a look at better. For me personally as a teacher, my number one golden sort of rule when deciding what to use as a homework task is if it can be self-marking, then hallelujah, because this saves everybody a lot of time. For children, it's instant feedback. And for us, it's instant feedback. So let's begin with a topic on self-marking homework. Starting off with one that is central to our most common sort of school platforms now, Microsoft and Microsoft Teams and Google Classroom. And I'm concentrating initially on using forms. So for those of you unfamiliar with it, Google Forms and Microsoft Forms are almost like surveys, but you can create quizzes through them. Level it up a little bit with add-ons like Mote, which is an add-on that you can install on Chrome, and you can put voice clips in, and you'll see why that's really relevant in a moment. And these are great create once and use again and again tools. So if you imagine any kind of straightforward sort of question and answer quiz, you can create them through forms. They might not be the world's flashiest thing at the moment. There's still a bit limited on what you can add, but they work very well. And they work best as well if they are multiple choice. But I thought, breaking what I've just said there, I thought we should try and have a go at something which isn't multiple choice, which is spellings. And I'm going to ask Suzanne to share in the comment section a link to a form that I've created on Google Forms, a spelling test, so you can see how it works. And for people who are watching this after the fact, who aren't here live to have a go, I will also model it on the screen as well. So for those of you joining in live, feel free to go onto it and have a play with it, experience it from the pupil point of view. Alternatively, watch along now as I show you what it is that we're having a look at. Okay, so I've got to make sure I find the right window for this. That's the one. Okay, so the Google form that I've created, it's actually a slightly adapted version of one I made for a child who's gone away from school for the last month, but needed to complete the end of term assessment. Poor girl. Anyway, I sent this to her, and it's an automatically marking spelling test. And you can use these as weekly spelling tests if you want to. You could even use them as daily spelling practice by allowing the children to send in more than one response. Now, the thing with spelling is, of course, you can't write the word you want them to spell because it's on the screen. And so what I did was I incorporated a voice clip, and I used an add-on called Mote. Now, if you attach Mote to your browser, which you can definitely do on Chrome, you get this little play button, which I'll quickly show on the screen now for anybody watching this video. Let's go out of full screen. There we go. And it looks like this. So we get this little play button that we can play. If I click on that, you can hear somebody reading the sentence and they can fill in the answer. If you don't have the Mote extension installed, all is not lost. You just get a link instead that you can click on. It opens a new tab. Google very kindly is warning me it's trying to take me somewhere else, which is good security. And you can listen to it then on a separate page. So it's still accessible even to people who don't have the Mote thing installed. So this is just one idea of how we could use forms for spellings, which out of all the homework we've done was the thing we were least sure we could actually make work online. And so children could work their way through this, type their answer in. I'm well aware there are potential issues of computers correcting for them. That is a bit of a possible caveat, but it's something that we're starting to try now. And then they can submit their answer and they can go back and do it again the next day, or you can limit on Google Classrooms, definitely you can limit them to one response or even one response per device, which is quite clever. Really up to you about how you want to use it. But this is just one example of how you can use forms to take offline homework online, and that's by creating a quiz of any kind, but this one in particular where it can automatically check the answers against an answer key and automatically give them marks. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. And it's something we've started to use recently and something we're planning to use next year. Now, we always advocate spelling is one of those things that I think will forever be offline and offline, so a combination of the two. So it'd be like practice and this is your test. So you try it out at home, ready for the in-school test. Okay, so that's idea number one. Let me just drag this window out of the way, which is getting in the way of my present button. There we go. So other uses of forms, very good for arithmetic if you want them to type in an answer. Again, like I said before, you can create them once and use them again and again every year with quick adaptations, fairly straightforward. Good for spelling, but also for pretty much any topic if you go down the route of multiple choice. And I keep mentioning multiple choice for a reason, which is that you can't, well, to do an open answer question, remember we're trying to get it to self-mark here to save us time. You would have to type in every possible way they could write the answer, and that's just not really not an option. So if you are going to get it to self-mark, stick with multiple choice or go for something like arithmetic or spelling with a set answer. Okay, and the benefit of this course, no additional cost, built into the system that most schools already have. That's the key here. I'm trying to show off some things that aren't going to cost your school hundreds of pounds a year, although the things that cost hundreds of pounds a year, of course, are really good as well. A second one, now this is getting a bit more out there. So we've used Kahoot in class before, We've rarely used it as homework, but actually we're finding that we found that during the pandemic, during homeschooling, Kahoot was a really good sort of tool for getting kids back into the engagement of it. You know, it's 2.5 months, it dragged, you know, it was hard to keep things really fresh. And so we started to use some quiz programs, and there's loads to choose from. I've just put 4 particular examples on the screen here, but I'm going to hone in on Kahoot, being one that's been around for a very long time and really adaptable and really well developed. And the best thing about Kahoot, in my opinion, which the others are adopting as well, is the fact that you can set it as a homework task. It will, as I said, one day be integrated into Google Classroom and probably Microsoft Teams as well. But it's just really easy to access. No need for the children to create accounts, and yeah, they can go at their own pace, because Kahoot is usually known as being a bit of a on-the-spot live quiz tool, but actually they've got this student-paced mode that you can use. So again, let's have a look at it in real life. So those of you who are live with us today, Suzanne will post a link in the chat to an example. Now, this is an example of what was actually a spelling lesson, but could easily be set as a spelling homework. I'm not entirely going to focus on spellings today, but it just so happens that this is one we did actually use. And to people watching this after the live event, let me show you what that looks like to the people playing along live. Now, let me make sure I've got the right window here. Yeah, that was the right one. So this is the pupil perspective. They sign in with their name. Now, at this point, I will mention, of course, with any online homework stuff, make sure you kind of spend a bit of time in school actually using it and getting them used to it. Although a lot of this stuff is fairly self-explanatory, it's great just to cover the things that they might not quite get right. You know, teach them about it first, then start to use it. That's what we did with Kahoot. I won't go through the entire Kahoot in this video, but I will just quickly demonstrate the kind of style of it. In the student-paced version that we're looking at here, what players can do is go through at their own pace. You can set slides which kind of teach things or recap things. You know, this would be, you could use this for pre-learning, you can use it for consolidation, as people said in the comments earlier. You know, a lot of homework people set is for consolidation, so this could be one way of doing it. What Kahoot has as a bit of an advantage over something like forms is there is a bit of a competitive element to it. And so, sorry, I forgot it's going to make a lot of noise. So the competitive element could be really appealing to some children who really feel that homework is just this individual exercise. It's me on my own. I just have to do it. So, you know, Kahoot's fun. There's no denying it. It's great fun. And so they can work their way through this and answer questions and see how well they're doing against other people. And that's quite a good motivator. And all the while, it's kind of teaching them stuff, they're practicing stuff. It's a spelling test, but they are much more engaged, and it promotes sort of speed and accuracy and all those wonderful things. It's just something slightly different. Now, eventually, they'll get all the way to the end of that, and there'll be a score that they have, and there'll be a podium and all those things. As a teacher, then, from the other perspective, from our perspective, what we get is feedback. We get to see who answered what and when and how. We get to see the mistakes people made. We can see as well what questions most children got wrong. And so it can then filter back into the classroom. You can then respond to it with the children. You could even play it again in class. You could have another go at it. And so that's really useful. Really easy to share. You simply share the link. We did have to tell the children, make sure you actually type your real name or we won't know who you are. That's a downside to there not being a count. But that will improve later with more integration in Teams and Classroom. So that's Kahoot. Now, I think Kahoot could be used for any topic at all. So you can use it for just about anything. And we can break away from the normal routine of spellings and writing and maths. There are going to be times where actually, yeah, we do want to give them a bit of homework about something else. And I've got a few examples of those coming up. Right, I'm moving quite quickly because I'm slowly realizing I think I've prepared more than I've got time for. So I'm going to move on to the next thing. So if you're still in the middle of playing that Kahoot, feel free to come back and join us. You can always carry on playing later. Okay, the next one. Now this is, we're getting really out there now, I'd like to think, by incorporating videos into homework a bit more. Now I've done this before through Google Classroom, where you can actually paste a YouTube link into an assignment, and that was all well and good. But EdPuzzle and its not quite as developed distant cousin Visio are two tools which allow you to create video-based activities. Again, I've got a demo which we can have a look at in a moment. And what's really good about these is there's a wealth of really good, really helpful videos online. Both of these are based around YouTube videos, but we do have people like BBC Teach, BBC Bite Size on YouTube, which is great, and that's one of the examples I'll show today. And we can use those videos to engage children in the homework a bit more. And the example I'm going to share with you today was something we used with our Year 3s and 4s during lockdown, and it was a Punctuation Pals game show. So on the screen at the moment is what the pupils see, and I'll show you what the teachers see in just a moment. So this is EdPuzzle. EdPuzzle allows you to take a video and add questions to it. It even allows you to do clever little things like not allow people to skip the video too, skip through the video. Now down at the bottom of the screen there's a little timeline, and along the timeline there's these little sort of pips, little teardrops, and those are where the questions are. So I took this video from the BBC Teach YouTube channel, and it's a quiz show about apostrophes and commas, so something that the children in Year 3 and Year 4 were learning. And what happens is they can watch the video, and when it gets to a point where a question has been set by me, like is about to happen, the video will pause and ask them the question. Now this is a preview one, so it says at the top, your answers won't be saved, but it's identical to what the children will see. They can then sort of follow along with the video. We know, who doesn't love watching a YouTube video? And then they can click on the answer, submit it, and it will tell them if they're right or wrong. It applies points. You can take points off. There's lots of customization you can do, and I'm not going to go through all of that stuff today, because it's easy enough to explore yourselves. But EdPuzzle's fantastic. It's free as well. It's freemium, so up to a point it's free. And then they can carry on, and the video keeps playing and it moves on. And so we're almost combining watching children's TV with a bit of learning. And you'd be amazed how engaged the children were with this. They absolutely loved it because it's a video at the end of the day. It's great. And watching kids get gunged, why not? And when they eventually reach the end of the video, what's also a nice little addition here, something I'm going to mention towards the end is you've got to be considerate of rabbit holes with online homework. We don't want kids, disappearing into parts of websites or even other websites when they were supposed to stick with something. What I love about EdPuzzle is it doesn't take you anywhere else. So it really locks the kids into the learning and focuses them on this. Besides multiple choice questions, you can do open-ended questions. You can do just comments. You don't even have to do questions. And you can even add pictures for answers, as I'll quickly demonstrate here. Nope, that's a note. So you can add notes. There's an example of a note. Here's an example of where I actually screenshot part of the screen and use that as answer. So it's really accessible as well to most ages. The youngest we've used it was year 3. It could work with younger kids, I reckon. Again, with a bit of practice in school first. Again, think of the opportunities here. Pretty much any topic, provided you've got a video. And you can upload your own videos as well. So if you wanted to spend 10 minutes explaining how to do something, which we're all brilliant at now because of the lockdown, you could upload that, pinpoint your questions, and then get the responses from it. As a teacher, what we get is the ability to crop the video and edit it. We've got the ability to add those questions. And then when something is finished, we can see a grade book of how they got on. Remember this, we're still within the self-marking tools. That's what I'm trying to demonstrate the most here. I can't remember where my mark books are because I haven't used it for a little while lately, and they all kind of disappear off into the background. But you do get a list of your children's names and how well they did and how well they did at individual questions, which is fantastic. All right, I've had my 5-minute warning already, so I better speed up. Crikey, I overplanned, which is rare. Okay, so let's move on. So the second topic I want to talk about today is the last of 2 topics, luckily, so I should be able to fit this in, is shared projects. This is the other thing that online homework opens up, this ability for children to work together, which is something usually reserved for secondary schools for obvious reasons. They're old enough to sort of organise themselves and get together. But the good thing now is we can actually do shared projects with the children not even being in the same house. And so one thing I'll talk about, but we won't actually have a go at today because of time, is a shared whiteboard experience. And what this is essentially, it's very similar actually just to a shared document, which is my next thing. But it's using tools like Google Jamboard or Microsoft Whiteboard for children to collaborate on and create things. And what we did recently is I set up a Jamboard and called it Our Great Greek Fact ebook. This was before we started the Greek topic. Their homework that week was to find out some interesting facts about ancient Greece. We gave them a few websites to use, dkfindout.com, Children's Britannia, safe, reliable websites. And then their job was to each create a page on Jamboard and add pictures, facts, and interesting things to it. And then what we were able to do was download that afterwards as a PDF, print it, put it in a book, stick it in the book corner, and it was great. And it was so engaging as well. Like I said earlier, what the good thing about things like Kahoot and this is that compared to sitting at the kitchen table, doing it on your own, you feel a sense of membership. You're a team player here. You're part of a team doing something. They can see each other's work, and so it motivates reluctant learners. It gives everyone a bit of a place to share, which is so nice for children too. And unfortunately, I haven't got the example of that Greek one with me, but it is just one of those things that just worked really well. And it was so simple because Jamboard's really straightforward to use, and as is Microsoft Whiteboard. Again, repeating a point from earlier, do teach them how to use it first, because Jamboard is something that children can easily mess up. When we give them editing rights, they can, of course, delete each other's pages if they want to, whether on purpose or accidentally. So there's a limit on the controls there. It's maybe not the best thing in the world because of that, but I'll show you something slightly better in a minute called Padlet. But it's an idea. It's an idea to start with. And again, pre-learning, you could do it as part of learn a bit about this before we start the topic. You could do it as an art portfolio. You could get them to paste pictures of some artwork they've created or some artwork they like. We recently did a topic on some portrait artists and sent links to sort of certain galleries and said, you know, paste your favorite portrait by this artist and write something about why, and shared that in the first art lesson. It was so nice to do something before the first art lesson to make the first art lesson even better, you know, do stuff for homework that you can then use in class. Just giving each child a section of a page or their own page, though, is my top tip for avoiding sort of problems like accidentally deleting other children's work. And in the same way, we can use things like Microsoft Word online or Docs online, or even Google Slides, which is great for presentations and posters, to do a similar thing, to create a fact page or to create a document, a shared story perhaps, all that kind of stuff. Those sentence games we play in class can be sort of done online through these, and the interaction with each other again can be really encouraging for reluctant learners. We won't have a go at it here today, but it is something to consider for just a different way to do homework online. And finally, this one we will jump on the example Padlet, because it's nice and quick, and it's probably my favorite of the sharing tools. And I've got an example of this I can share as well. So Padlet, for people who aren't familiar with it, think of it like a digital display board. People can share links, pictures, comments, and it's got lots of benefits to it over things like Jamboard too. It's not the same as Jamboard in many ways, but it's got a lot more controls for the teacher. Again, shared experience, encouraging for reluctant learners, and no accounts required as well, which is useful as long as the children remember to name themselves. It's safe, it's locked down, you know, random members of the public can't get on there. Here's an example from a recent topic we did where the children, for homework, created some artwork. This was at a time where our policy, our sort of risk assessment, COVID risk assessment, was saying we can't bring stuff into school from home. So we said, okay, share it on the website then, share it on Padlet. And so we were able to do a gallery. The children were able to see each other's. You can even add stuff like hearts. You can add likes and things. Again, teach the children about that because they can get a bit obsessed with it. But just as a gallery tool, it's fantastic. You can go far beyond this. So again, another example, we did a topic on the Vikings back in September, and so before that topic began, as part of their homework, we said to them, right, find out an interesting fact about the Vikings and share it on the Padlet page. And so when we started the first lesson, which is usually, you know, what do we already know about the topic, we had it all ready to go, and it helped us to develop such a rich discussion in that lesson and save quite a bit of lesson time for that discussion instead of doing it all in that time. And it was a fun bit of homework because it got them researching too, which, you know, at year 5 is a good skill to start developing. So let's jump onto the Padlet and have a look at how it looks to the children. So at the moment it's blank. Anyone who's joined live, do use the link in the chat window and join in. I'm well aware I've got about 1 minute of time here, but just to demonstrate to anyone who's new to Padlet, you just click the plus in the bottom corner and you can add photos, you can add links to things. If you use it on an iPad, it's even easier to take photos of stuff. You can upload photos. You can even search for things on the web. And I talked earlier about extra features over something like Jamboard, because one of the things that's great for teachers is that you can sort of turn off commenting or turn on commenting. You can approve all posts, so it's not a free-for-all, which you can't do with Padlet. So you have a bit more control over it, which is nice because you don't want to be constantly checking on it for that sake. again, we're trying to save us time here, not add more, and just build up this wonderful collection of work or ideas, like this example that's on the screen at the moment, that the children can then go and look at and enjoy both at home and in the classroom at school. Right, I'm going to rattle through the last 2 slides very quickly. Thank you for holding on for me. I've exhausted my entire time today. Final things to consider then, when thinking about moving homework online, don't forget there's always the important questions to consider, and they are, in my opinion, what will the pupils gain from actually doing this online? What is the benefit of doing it online over doing it the old school way in a book at home, mostly on their own? And for me, I think it's the collaboration which has really won me over in recent months. What will I gain as their teacher from them doing it online? You know, is it going to save me time? Is it going to be more interesting? Are the results going to be better? Are they going to be able to be more creative? Is it going to create more home stress? As Suzanne said, is it going to take longer to do it this way? Is it going to be more confusing for children? And is it worth your time to create? Don't forget, create it once, you can use it multiple times. That is a bonus. But is it going to take you so long to actually make something like this? It's not even worth doing. All the tools I've shared today, I think, fairly quick to make. They're never going to be as quick as pre-made stuff, of course, like My Maths, like Times Table Rockstars, like these other services, but you can certainly personalize them to your class. Things to consider: check your sources carefully. If we're sending children on, if we're getting children to do homework online, make sure that you, as I say, reduce the rabbit holes, try to reduce the number of different places they can end up away from the main task they were supposed to be doing, which is why things like EdPuzzle are so useful, because you can lock them into the homework and they can't just disappear onto another YouTube video. Choose the best tools for the job. We learned over lockdown that Google Slides is best for posters, much better than Google Docs. So little things like that. Get to know the stuff yourself, really explore it yourself, create an example pupil account and try it out. Personalize it wherever possible. Remember, the good thing about things like Google Classroom and Teams is you can sort of set slightly varied work for different children without it necessarily being obvious to everyone that you've got something a bit different. And do things you can't already achieve in school. You know, if you're a school with quite few devices in school, where it would be difficult for the children to all look up portraits by an artist in an art lesson, well, set it as homework like we did, and then share it in school in the lesson. Okay, and that is it. So I'm going to switch back to the screen here. I can see Suzanne smiling with me with a kind of, we're slightly running over time face, but I'm sure it'll be okay.
No. Yeah, thank you so much, Will. Your passion for all this stuff is just really comes through, and I've learned so much. And actually, in true annoying teacher or parent that's also a teacher style, I kind of feel like passing all that on to my daughter's teachers as well. So, yeah, thank you so much again. Lots and lots to take from that, I think. So many different ways we can do homework online now, so it's really good.
Yeah,
thank you.
Let's make it let's start to make homework something kids want to do, actually want to get into and get on with. And also, just to say, obviously I have rattled through everything quite fast, especially towards the end. There are handouts attached, which is the slide set, and I would say obviously do get in touch with me as well. Through the CAS website or through Twitter at WM Franklin if you have any questions or want to hear something again a bit slower. And this video will be available on GoToWebinar, and you can access that through the CAS website. So you can always play it again, slow it down if you need to.
Thank you, Will. So I'll bring the session to a close. Apologies again for running a little bit over, but I think you'll agree lots and lots of information there today. When we finish this webinar, a short survey will appear on the screen, and we would be grateful if you could take a minute to complete that. As Will said, a recording of the webinar will be available on the CAS YouTube channel after the session, and also via the CAS website. And finally, we hope to see you at other sessions. We've got a few more left in the summer showcase this week. The next one for primary is tomorrow at 4 o'clock and is about data and data logging. And so I hope to see you there. And finally, do continue to spread the word about computing at school. Thanks for joining us and have a lovely evening. Bye for now. Bye.